we did a lot. We did put this out. We met with Board of Forestry members. That went a long way. You know, put out rewards. We protested in San Francisco. This was late '86. I was still calling myself a journalist then. We had these, you know, really fun kind of demonstrations. This was actually really ill-advised. In 1988, you know, we did this. We had Day of the Living Dead Hurwitzes in Scotia. And, you know, it was great theater. But I don't know if you can see that, the Shrunken Living Dead Hurwitz heads, 900 million each. But, you know, the people there hated us, and I don't blame them. It was fairly arrogant, you know, kind of in their faces, but they really hated it when the little boy popped out of the coffin. That was it for them. So in any case, you know, we had regular protests too with the kids and stuff, and their beautiful signs, and they're wonderful, and even protested down in LA at the Max Ham shareholders meeting. That is the entire Southern California Earth First contingent. And I'm not joking. In Humboldt County, we went around to the elected representatives' offices and told them what we thought of their policies. That's an aide to Doug Bosco. Doug Bosco, when he was run out of office in 1990, immediately went to work for Max Ham as an attorney. Dan Hauser, after the '85 takeover, wrote a letter to Pacific Lumber saying, if you do anything to change the logging policies, you know, I'm going to do something. So they said, oh, well, how about we have a $250 a plate dinner for you, re-election dinner, in Scotia, at the Scotia Inn? And he said, sure. And then after that, he wouldn't do a thing. He wouldn't even talk to us. You know, he was a complete sellout. Hope you're not here. Are you here, Dan? Okay. So, you know, we got into some direct action, of course. We blockaded logging trucks. This was a very exciting action. This was actually in Whitehorn. This is not PL, but how could I not put in the photo of the crazy logger's son with the shotgun? You know, he attacked several people and fired the gun in the air, and there's the gun. Another one, we did blockade Pacific Lumber log trucks as well. This is at the corner of Highway 36 and 101. And here is the owner of the log truck company striking this woman for taking his picture in front of the Humboldt County Sheriff's deputy, who didn't even admonish him. He did nothing, and he was right there. I mean, I wish I had it on video, but this is good enough, right? I mean, boom, there's Hitler. So we also locked down the stuff, you know, with just a lot of crazy actions. And, you know, a lot of this stuff gained some publicity. So we got this Chronicle in October after our San Francisco demo, followed up with that. This is a little bit of how the media works. So here I am, right? And this is in Sonoma County, first of all. It's not even in Humboldt County. And the photographer cuts off a branch. He says, hold this. And so I hold it, and then you can't read the caption probably. It says, Greg King examined a seedling from one of the virgin redwoods he's had to say. Right? As if I went down, I yanked the sucker out of the ground. You're going to take my picture. So anyway, that's a good story, and I got to have my most prescient prediction in it. Otherwise, this would be a year's litigation and civil disobedience, which is exactly what happened. So the publicity started to go further. Here is Houston Post, Max Ham's hometown newspaper, kind of shaming them. Philadelphia Inquirer, front page, in June of '87. Newsweek, July of '87. Business Week was actually pretty early, February of '87, all basically shaming. You know, the business community wasn't necessarily in favor of cutting down the last redwoods. I think they were in favor of whatever else Max Ham wanted to do. New York Times, as usual, about a year late. And when all this publicity came out, especially in the '87 era, it was clear that nothing was going to happen. We needed to ramp it up. In fact, I was just reading some of my journals, and it was, you know, we need to ramp things up, or whatever I said. So we started climbing trees, and we became the first redwood tree climbers in history. And that was me in the last shot. This is Mokai. This was one of our more harebrained actions. This was on Highway 101 in Rockefeller Forest. We kind of wanted to show people, well, this was protected. Here, this is what if we were cutting this down, right? And that's me there. And this is a guy from Santa Cruz in All Species Grove. And All Species Grove, I'm going to talk about it almost at length, hopefully not too much at length, but you know, this is All Species Grove, a fantastic example of plant life. It was almost 2,000 feet elevation. In the ecotone, you get outside the grove and you get into the meadows and hardwoods and Douglas fir forest out in the Neyland area. And this is my original hiking map from that era. The orange is All Species Grove as it stood in 1986. And in 1987, while EPIC was involved in litigation on two other plans, which we're going to get to, Max Sams, well, before that actually, they submitted this clear cut, which went very quickly. They clear cut this beautiful little grove very quickly. And then, while EPIC was locked up in litigation, submitted this timber harvest plan to cut the heart out of All Species Grove. And if you can see where it says All Species Creek written in by hand there, that's our name for that little creek. And that creek, when you stood there on this flat, it was this gorgeous flat, unusually beautiful, even for an old-growth redwood grove. And when you stood there, and the water trickling through, and the ferns over your head, and the trees were giant on this flat. And again, it's about 2,000 feet, so a lot of times the fog would come in and just hang there. It was like a hanging valley. And when you looked, it looked like the creek would wend off into that first photo I showed you with the dinosaurs in it. Like you were going to go back 1,000,000 years if you followed this creek. And that's how it felt. And it was ghost-like. Like, how can this place even exist? And the question that everyone asked, even all the national reporters that we brought out there, how could anyone cut this down, right? But they did. They cut down All Species Grove. So this is what's left of All Species Grove today. Very glad it's there. The confluence of Bell and Lawrence Creek is intact. These are the lesser cathedrals, as they call them. They're not permanently protected. They're only protected until 2048, I think, 49, something like that. And this is what it looked like when they were logging in All Species Grove. Again, the CDF called these small trees. That's a 1,500-year-old tree. And it wasn't just the logging, of course. Here they are gouging 6 feet of topsoil to get into the grove. And this is what it looked like inside there. These are fantastic examples of forest life. The best of the best. And no human intrusion. No trails, no interpretive signs, nothing. And this is the tree I sat in. My second tree sit in 1987. Mary and I did one, and with a lot of help, of course. That's what I want to emphasize here. This is a movement. And we escaped down the dark side of our trees after a week, came back 3 weeks later, and went in this one. And this is what it looked like from 150 feet. You can see the sleeping platform in the background, 3x6 plywood platform. And that was really a gas. We had a great time in the trees. I mean, that was kind of the upside. Here's what it looks like. Looked like All Species Grove with the clear cutting. And here, this is the same tree you saw earlier. And this is All Species Grove today. Those arrows show what's left. You can see in the middle, there's still some old growth along the creek. All Species Creek is left small trees. But what's really important here is that this is the residual that we're talking about. This is a recent satellite photo. So going south from All Species Grove down the Lawrence drainage toward Yogger Creek, we get to Owl Creek Road. We saw this picture before. And again, the residual forest in the background, and this is just to emphasize what happened there. And again, about of the 56,000 acres, I believe 50,000 acres were logged. So it's a 50,000 acre clear cut and basically in 2 big chunks. The other one being over by Humboldt Redwood State Park, adjacent there. And these are, again, not insignificant trees. This is a residual cut. These are big trees that were cut, very valuable. Working our way then northwest, we get to Headwaters Grove. And I think everybody knows about Headwaters Grove, Headwaters Forest. This is about 3,000 acres still. There's definitely some significant incursions, which we'll get to. This is called Postcard Grove because we put out probably between our first EPIC Humboldt Watershed Council, I think a couple 100,000 of these went out. I've gone to the Bay Area to see people down there or whatever, and I'll go in and there's one on the fridge. It's really great, and it's a very effective tool. And so, we loved Headwaters Grove. We spent a lot of time there. This is Nina Williams, who is at CCAT here. A lot of us camped at CCAT, having no other place to go. And she was a director there, so we got in. And again, the trees, the forest, the trees might not look that big, but to the right of the screen, tree here. You know, and they're just everywhere like that. That's Mokai, another one of the heroes of the story. A couple of hikers that didn't want their faces in the picture in 1989 because we're all under injunction. You know, that we've all been arrested, processed, and the judge says, you come back here, you're going to jail for a year. And so we didn't go back to court, thankfully, but we did go back to the forest, you know, many, many times. So again, incursions into Headwaters Grove. This is a road cut into Salmon Creek. You can see the side cast or loose soils there. It all goes into the creek. They were cutting very fast roads and trees. This is a clear cut on the south side of Headwaters Grove, 1986. Max Sam came in very quickly. That's what it looks like, again, from the ground level. And this is Headwaters Grove today. And you can see what we'll get to here. So, again, I mentioned those epic timber harvest plans and why they couldn't sue on all species grove. And you know, we really tried to get Sierra Club, anybody, to come in and sue on all species grove. Nobody would do it. Again, the last of the last. What are you doing with your millions of millions? I'll tell you what Sierra Club is doing. I know somebody who signed up for a $15 membership, and as soon as that happened, every day, like 3 or 4 pieces of junk mail. They immediately sold the name. It was so clear that that's what occurred. So, you know, I like a lot of their work, but you know, this is not, you know, you've got millions of dollars in the bank. You go save the last of the last. And that's what you're there for. So this is one of the timber harvest plans that Max Sam submitted in 1987. This was THP 240 and THP 241, 274 acres of clear cutting proposed for the middle and the best parts, the biggest trees of Headwaters Grove, and Epic sued on these and tied it up, and we'll get to that story in a bit. Here is a plan they also submitted later in 87 that did not get litigated, and they cut that, as you can see. And with these plans, one of the key things about this was I was able to go to the review team meeting, the CDF review team meeting, and where they talk about this plan, and you can review the CDF Forester's report, in this case, Stephen Davis. And I asked Stephen in this review team meeting, here we are, 2 clear cuts in the middle of the last largest ancient redwood grove in the world. I asked him about his statement that he said in the timber harvest plan, in his evaluation, minimal impacts will occur to these values, meaning wildlife, some wildlife may benefit. All right? So you see this stuff and you just want to, you know, bang your head against the wall, or his. But I go to the meeting and I have a tape recorder and I sit across from him and we go over this stuff and I say, hey, what about this? You know, won't logging impact old growth dependent species? And Davis, nervous because Max Sam, Pacific Lumber, sent 4 guys, big guys, to these meetings. And they would send them out in the field, too, and that'll come out in a minute here. And so he's nervous. He says, I don't think so. What makes you not think so? Once the old growth habitat is gone, how will the wildlife species that depend on that habitat survive? I mean, you know, a 4-year-old can come up with a question like that. What habitat are you speaking of? You know, that's also a 4-year-old response. The old growth forest habitat. Again, 4-year-olds talking to each other. Who? Now we're getting even a little younger. This old growth forest habitat. I'm pounding on the map. I'm like, right there. You know, I don't think there's a cumulative effect on those. There's plenty of habitat out there, right? So he's protecting his job and maybe his ass because it was a very tense time for regulators. So, John Hummel. Remember John Hummel? I talked about him, Fish and Wildlife. He said that 96-acre clear cut on Thompson Creek, no problems. They've done a great, commendable amount of work, making sure that blah, blah, blah. So he's sitting there, and I turn to John Hummel, who's supposed to be protecting wildlife, and I say, what about this, John? Is what Stephen Davis is saying is true? The tape's running. And he says, no. You have specific species of wildlife that are dependent upon old growth stands. If their habitat is taken away from them, you're going to lose a significant number of the population. They do not have the ability to move next door. This is an ecological concept that was understood many, many years ago. The population is going to decrease. You will lose it. We are not interested in turning the state over into a deer management farm. So he found God, something, finally, right at this moment. So incredibly, right, you'd think that this would stop everything. The wildlife expert that the state is employing to look over these things turns this in, says, no, this is bullshit. And it gets approved. It just gets approved. Bang, rubber stamp. And that's exactly what the judge said. months later with Epic 1, was that CDF is rubber stamping these